So here we are for the last trend interview, and we have here again Joel, our research director for IDC security research in Europe. So Joel, thank you very much again for being with us. We started yesterday talking about global trends, so big shift for the software-defined solutions, then the big tech players like AWS, Google, and Microsoft being also the big players in this arena. Then we talk a little bit about GDPR and also the endpoint solutions and how it's evolving and being integrated with other solutions. And we can now close with a more broad overview of how do you see the future of trust, talk a little bit about some disruptive technologies. Can you share with us a little bit our research about this view of the future of trust?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Gabriel. I would be happy to. The next discussion now is around moving the conversation from security to trust. As Gabriel did a great job highlighting and summarizing the discussion themes yesterday, really we're talking about a story here and how security as a metric is gravitating towards a trust metric, because that's what's important for enterprises as they do business and compete in various markets. Do your customers trust you? Do your partners trust you? And any damage to that trust is very can be very, well, not good for business. Let's put it that way. But let's look. We're actually going to rewind the clock a little bit with this particular graph. At the top level, you've got an economic situation. At the bottom level, you've got a business focus. And the economic situation at the top is kind of like a timeline from when the COVID-19 pandemic started to impact our lives, well, just over 12 months ago for most people. So the COVID crisis took place, and the first immediate reaction to that was secure home working, because people in droves had to go home. There was national lockdowns. They were not allowed to go to the office. In terms of business focus on the bottom, business continuity was the main objective. And I think it's interesting, the chief information officers and the chief security officers across companies mostly did very well. Lots of companies were already doing some type of digital transformation prior to the pandemic, but those programs became accelerated in many cases, like over a weekend. I've spoken to CISOs that have said, the board called them in on a Friday and said, okay, by Monday, everybody's going to be working at home. Go make it work. Of course, that threw up lots of other challenges, but overall, the industry and well, let's say technology, digital transformation and security technology has responded very well to that new dynamic, and very quickly. And then sort of over time, we saw an economic slowdown. Some specific sectors were hit very, very severely, of course. And because personnel were at home and working in different environments, the secure data was necessary all over the place, including on a home broadband or on somebody's mobile. And then because of the economic slowdown, business focus became a cost optimization. And then we sort of moved towards the recession, which is, I guess, maybe very deep in the middle of the pandemic, when everybody was in lockdown already for a long time. A lot of unknown about when the lockdowns would end and life would start to return to normal. And that still is the case to some degree. But business resiliency became a very important area in sort of recovering from that and that return to growth. So we saw in terms of business focus, targeted investments to sort of capture that return to growth. And a lot of those investments actually were in security, to shore up the security of the new business normal of perhaps a hybrid environment. And then the next normal in future enterprise we see is the shift towards trust, which is far on the right-hand side, sort of moving to the end of what we've spoken about here. And interestingly, a number of enterprise, let's say, programs flattened that curve slightly. Instead of going all the way down deep that you see in this chart, companies did not quite go as low on that curve in terms of suffering from the recession. and made the return to growth on a more rapid pace when they had advanced digital transformation programs. We have seen that within our research of companies making a strong recovery, return to growth, and trajectory to the next normal, the future enterprise and the future of trust, based on strong digital transformation initiatives or capabilities. Let's talk a little bit about trust. So this slide is if the Titanic was sinking today. So you can read a number of comments here that could be coming out. Let's say, of course, back when the Titanic disaster took place, there was no such thing as mobile phones. But you can imagine a scenario in the connected world where people on the ship, on the far right there, they'd be saying, "It's dry here, the sinking is a hoax." On the far left at the top, "If I drink antifreeze, I won't freeze to death." In the middle there, just above the lifeboat industry funded this. Nobody can force me to wear a life jacket. All this fake news, basically. 1,500 dead, more than that die every year of heart disease, that type of thing. And whilst this is perhaps a slightly amusing slide and an interesting way to show how fake information permeates society today, there's kind of a serious message behind it. And that's that bad actors are actually taking advantage of AI-enabled multimedia disinformation. It's mass-produced, widely distributed, and posted on a lot of social media. And when these are combined with cyber attacks and skillful disinformation programs, it underlines democratic society. At the very extreme end, this can cause lives, when the wrong message gets out and people believe it. And so, the point behind this is if you, security is more important than ever, of course, that's the main thing, but increasingly it's also a key pillar in the broader discussion around trust. If you see somebody that looks like a government leader or looks like an influential person, it looks exactly like them saying something, then it's misinformation, it's disinformation, it's spread by, bad elements. It's a serious thing. So we need to, as a whole, society, governments, industry need to really focus on the security aspect of this and making sure that trust credentials are very strongly protected. But it's sort of looking at the next slide. It leads us to a bit of a tricky question. How do you measure trust? How can you measure that? And actually, you do have another prediction on this slide, which was in the Futurescape slides from yesterday. By 2023, 40% of European CEOs will introduce trust metrics to comply with emerging ethical, diversity, and sustainable business practices. And so it's an emerging area, but at IDC, we're looking at this very carefully, and we're thinking about the rise of the trust metric. And these are some of the ideas here that contribute towards that, I guess, research that we're doing at IDC around security, value at risk, cyber risk analytics, the mean time to detection, and components that, have a tangible or solid feel and relationship to trust and how you measure it. Looking at this next slide here, this slide shows in numbers a digital trust driver, and it's the exploding e-commerce that took place. If you look on the right-hand slide, you could see a little red arrow there, which is how e-commerce global revenues grew during the COVID-19 period. That's because people were at home and didn't go shopping as much because they couldn't, and so they did a lot more shopping online. But the key point here is that in order to buy something online like that, you have to have a strong trust relationship with the vendor. You might order something on eBay or on Amazon.com or any other of the number of online shopping platforms, and there are some things that we use to trust that. It has to look real for a start. It has to look, like a legitimate website. We like to read reviews to see that other customers have bought those products, and so that we can trust them higher. But this is an interesting slide in terms of it shows how digital trust is present, and it has contributed to a strong growth in e-commerce. And so this slide shows actual interview, more like survey results that IDC have done, where we've asked the questions, what are your organization's top trust goals? And the top ones that come up are, protect sensitive data from cyber attacks and IT configuration mistakes. So that's, again, sensitive data is your customer's data. And that's a very sensible top trust goal. Again, it's something that we can measure and put tools in place to protect. And then the second point, very highly ranked, establish multi-factor authentication for all access to sensitive data. Most of us carry this very clever computer wherever we go. It's never too far away. And when we're doing work and you receive an SMS, for example, or a second authentication on that device, it increases the security of that. And then the far right, that pie chart, how important is it for your technology suppliers to be trustworthy? Also hammers home that point. 58% of people responded extremely important. We in order to do business with suppliers and partners, we need for them to be trustworthy. And so that more or less concludes the talk I had today to give on the future of trust. Just some final conclusions, if I may here, Gabriel, is the future of trust is significant and requires leadership. For example, a chief officer of trust. The future is digital and security is a business enabler. Security must align with business strategy, but also with privacy and compliance, one of the topics that we really discussed yesterday. At the bottom row there, so metrics for trust take shape and then mature. That's something that's happening. And then moving over to the right on the bottom row there, COVID-19 continues to impact operations. The main focus continues to be business continuity, cost optimization, and resilience, which feeds nicely into the next block to the right of that one, digital resiliency. The pandemic taught us hard lessons, and from those lessons, I think we're seeing this, footprint for digital resiliency, which really leads into or strengthens the digital trust metric too. And just the final point here on digital trust, the last block on this chart is that successful programs need company-wide and executive support. If it's just one, lonely CISO, banging the drum and saying we need a digital trust strategy program in place at our company, it's going to be pretty hard to implement that. We've seen that with digital transformation. When there isn't really strong buy-in or support across the organization, those programs can fail. So digital trust programs need company-wide and executive level support in order to proceed ahead towards a successful conclusion. Thank you, Gabriel.
No, thank you, Joel. It was great to have your view during these 2 days and talk about these big trends around security, then talk a little bit about the GDPR, the privacy, how the edge and the endpoint is changing, the way we look security, and close with this view of the future of trust, where future enterprise will need to put not only security in top priority, but they will have to look it at more high level, whatever you call it, the future of trust. So thank you very much for being with us today. It was great.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
E assim terminamos a nossa entrevista com o Joel, o nosso responsável de research para a área da segurança, e voltamos em breve.